And good morning, everybody. Which is, let me just check a few things here. Something's not quite working right. And good morning, everybody. Oh, as you can see. Which is, let me just check a few things here. Something's not quite working right. Oh, no, we're going on, everybody. Oh, as you can see. Which is, let me just check a few things here. Something's not quite working right. Oh, no, we're going on, everybody. Oh, as you can see. Which is... Don't worry, we're going to get on top of this. It's an early morning start, and some of us bugger things up. Don't worry, we're going to get on top of this. It's an early morning start, and some of us... There we go. And good morning, Eric. How are you this morning?
I mustn't grumble, and good morning, Paul. Little early and very, very different to what we normally have, but... welcome, everybody, and to this Remembrance special, or shall we say alternative remembrance, I think we should call it. And how's things with yourself, Paul?
Well, it's a beautiful morning here. I was up late last night talking to some buggers on the radio. I can't remember what was going on. Got a good night's kip. Quite early for me because I shot off, and I think I hit the hay about 11:15, which is very early. I'm not normally nodding off until about 12:31 in the morning, something like that. Beautiful morning, still mild, sun. We always like to start with the weather, don't we? It's how we sort of settle into all of this.
Yes, that's right.
And I've had no breakfast. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Breakfast has been so far 2 pints of tea. Hopefully don't get any sort of repercussions of that during the show and have to leg it for the loo. I don't think so. I've got good bladder control. This is very important for everybody to know this. So this is a breakfast special in a way, or a What did you have for? Have you had breakfast? That's what I want to know.
I've had breakfast. I had a very hearty meal, and I also had your special coffee, which is the coffee with coconut, oil and butter. So beautiful. I've gone off of milk now. I'm not bothering with milk. It's the first time in my life I've got into black coffee. So there we go. So,
cool.
Thanks to you.
I'm some use. I am of some use. We've got some. We've got some really. By the way, shout out to everybody on Rumble and YouTube for getting up or not going into work. We're trying to find out how many people actually have a proper job. Yes, we're not expecting a huge audience. We're not expecting a huge audience this morning. It doesn't matter. No. We're also going out of a radio soapbox, which is good. And I think really, almost like for sort of breakfast radio stuff, Eric, radio's cool, actually. Although, of course,
I like it.
Yeah, me too. We can bumble around a bit and do certain things. And so
that's right.
We've got some fine coffee in the house, but I didn't have coffee this morning. So tea first thing for me. I need tea to start off with. Coffee's about... I might go make a cup during the show. No, probably at the end, about 11:30. No. Time for a cup of coffee then when we've closed up or whatever. So
I'm a teaholic as well. I mean, I was brought up on tea, and coffee was for posh people when I was a kid. I suppose it was similar to yourselves. Any posh people have coffee. We have tea. But I've noticed we're picking up in Rumble. We got quite a few listeners in Rumble. I've just said greetings there. So if you can hear us, say hello in chat. And but by the way, well, I'm about 70 miles north of yourself. And it's nice and sunny where you are. And at Fockham Hall Heights, it's overcast and looking pretty drab.
Well, I'm going to have to practice my weather report thing, but there's a light westerly breeze skimming across the front of the seafront, a little cloud cover, but breaking up, sun shining through, birds singing in the trees, a little bit damp, but not cold. And remember, it's cold out there, so put your winter warmers on. It's actually not cold today. I've still got the shorts on. Here we are. So I'm doing quite well now. Yeah. I normally won't make it to December because we'll get a cold snap at some point. But Anyway, so why have we convened today's show, Eric? Why have we done that? What's the tradition for you? Because you've done this for a few years, haven't you? And I'm glad to join you really on this.
Well,
on this day.
I've always done alternative remembrance because we hear the voice of the establishment broadcasters because there's two versions of war, and that is what really happened and the Hollywood version. And unfortunately, the vast majority of the population believe the Hollywood version. For example, none of us know anybody that was alive during the American Civil War. Mm-hmm. So our immediate thoughts, if somebody mentions the American Civil War, is Hollywood, because that's all we've been brainwashed with. But if it was possible to bring alive a veteran of the American Civil War, they'd probably look at the Hollywood version and say it's a load of old rubbish. The same as my father did when he saw the Hollywood version of World War II, because the establishment have a lot to hide. And that's why there's still a lot from World War II, which is still under the Official Secrets Act. You can't get records of it. It's very interesting. Why? After 80 years? There's something very... And would that be Sefton Delmar? Something to do with him?
I think so. It probably would be too. Yeah, he definitely has a role in it. I think line maintenance has got to occupy a reasonable chunk of their budget, because it's ongoing in so many areas, not just even with regards to the warfare incidents that this nation has been involved with, which is sort of off the charts. I mean, there are obviously there's all sorts of things, but anybody that grazes around YouTube from time to time, no doubt you all do that. One of the things that pops up on my feed. There's a video going around, the number of countries that Britain has invaded. Have you seen that one?
I haven't seen it, but I think there's only two that we haven't, isn't it? I think it's Portugal and
Portugal. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the only one. There's another one somewhere, but I don't know where. But we've invaded always. We're quite rather warlike, aren't we? You know.
Well, I think it all depends, I guess, what you think has been driving it all. If you actually meet normal English, Scots, Welsh, and Northern Irish and Irish people from these islands, although we have some fire in our bellies, and we need more of that at the moment, of course, you wouldn't say, well, these are people that want to go out and just sort of start waging war everywhere. Obviously, there's another force at play here that's kicked in. But yeah, I'm sure we could find a good reason to go to war with Portugal if you could think of something, Eric. Maybe.
Yes, we're thinking of something. Yes.
Yeah, I think basically it's the Portuguese and the Eskimos are about the only people that we've not had a scrap with. I think. I mean, it's sort of very strange. It's to do with getting boats, no doubt. It's to do with getting boats in considerable numbers before anybody else did. And going, and then you've got the Industrial Revolution, and some little chunk down there in London, that little city place, has been really infested with almost like the globalist ideology for a long time. You could, in fact, argue that it was ever since the formation of the East India Company in 1600. That's how old this is. 1600 it was formed. So that's before the English Civil War, 425 years ago. Long time back.
Really? And they had their own army as well, didn't they? They were huge. But I actually think the last just war, if there is such a thing, that we fought and unfortunately lost was 1066, because we were genuinely being invaded then. And it was on a knife edge. We almost repelled the Normans. And it's just because the English army were exhausted because they'd fought a battle up north at a place, something bridge, and marched down to the south and fought a second battle. But the other reason is because we broke rank when we shouldn't have done, because many of the people there was not only English, by our sides were Scots and Irish and Welsh, because they knew that if we fell, they would fall. And there was different accents and things. And what happened is the Normans turned tail and started to run, and we broke rank and chased them, which they wanted us to do. And of course, they came around in a pincer movement and destroyed the English army. And that was it. It is
a big deal. It is a big deal. I mean, I was thinking as well, all this sort of, in all these places that we've been, prior to that, you've got to go back 2,000 years now, which of course most of us don't, including me, although I was stumbling across something. There's the legend of Hengist and Horsa. Don't know if you've ever heard this. Two Saxon lads.
Yes.
It's much of, I think there are sort of places, is it Kent? There might be a stone.
That's right.
There
might be a little stone. That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now this, we're talking literally 2,000 years ago, sort of 100s, 150, something like that. And these islands were getting invaded regularly. It's almost as if we were taking a lot of invasions from all the Jutes and the Angles and the Saxons and all this. And everybody thinks it was relatively peaceful. It wasn't, actually. There was a lot of fighting took place. There was a lot of betrayal by the Brits, as well as the other side. They'd make agreements, then they'd break them. I think there was one. The thing I was watching was where there'd been some scrapping. I can't remember the name of the king. He'd promised some land to Hengist and Horsa, then decided he didn't want to give it to them. So they all made up, but they didn't make up because they were all invited to a feast. And Hengist and Horsa's lads, they all brought some daggers. And at a suitable time, I suppose after 8 pints of wine had been consumed or something, they slaughtered everybody. They'd had enough. So this sort of fury is nothing. I mean, it's nothing new and unique to these islands, but maybe it's because we were on the receiving end so much that, it went out the other way. It's a desperately sad theory. I don't really subscribe to it myself. I'm just sort of shooting my mouth off here on a Tuesday morning. But, yeah.
That's a coincidence. Seriously, that's a fantastic coincidence, because whilst I was eating my breakfast this morning, I was actually watching a video about those two characters that you just mentioned. Isn't that an amazing coincidence?
Really? Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it was on YouTube, and I was sitting there sort of scoffing away going, that's interesting, But really, when they say we've been invaded, yes, we've been invaded by fellow Europeans, which had a culture that was very similar to ours, because Europe is, but I think it's the first time in history now that we're being invaded by a culture that is completely alien to ours, and that is the most frightening thing.
And it is, although I don't know. Do you think the word invasion's right? Because I kind of don't. I know people use it. An invasion would be where we saw them massing at some point, and the flag goes up. We go, we're being invaded. Let's defend ourselves. This is something much more subtle and therefore much more devastating in a way, or is going to go that way, because there's still only, although I think it's going in the right direction, a relatively small amount of people who are prepared to speak out about this. It's increasing, though. There have been lots of good signs recently, as we report, I think, in both of our shows. But I was watching something the other day. I was watching The Jolly Heretic. I've forgotten his real name, but do you know The Jolly Heretic?
Oh, yes. Professor Edward Dutton.
Very bright guy. Speaks very, very quickly.
Oh, very guy. Yes.
Very, very quickly. Because he gets exhausted with people speaking slowly because his brain's running on whatever it's running on, high-speed turbocharged synaptic connections. And he was talking about woke people. I'll send you the link at some point. It was a 15-minute extract from an interview with Andrew Gold, who seems to have a thriving YouTube channel over here. Lots of people recommend him to me, but I don't have time to watch all these things. But I caught this little sort of 15-minute clip, and he was talking about about how traitors develop within tribes. It's very interesting, because they've always been with us.
Really?
Yeah, they've always been with every tribe. And it's to do with like the pecking order of who's the strongest. In other words, I would suggest you and I are conservative. I don't mean politically. I mean by orientation. We're saying...
I agree with you. Yes, we are.
Yeah. And we are traditionalists in the best sense of the word. Not to keep going traditions that are obviously dangerous and silly, but to say, look, our forefathers actually sort of went through these things directly, and the way that life's structured now is a direct result of what they learnt through experience. And so it's long, and we're bred long in the bone with this stuff. It's sort of part of your genetic imprint when you arrive here as an Englishman or a Scotsman or a Welshman or a man or woman of Ireland, Northern Ireland. And I think, and same goes for all the other countries of Europe, you sort of pick that up. But what occurs is that the weak they will actually form alliances with other tribes. They do it. I mean, and this is nothing new. It goes all the way back even to sort of the Greek myths and tragedies. Even, what's the tale of the Spartans, the 300 Spartans? The reason that they finally got done over was that they were betrayed by one of their own, weren't they? Who was dissatisfied with the way he was being treated by King Leonidas for all sorts of reasons. Oh, morning, seagulls. Don't know if you caught that. I have seaside morning.
I heard that. That's
fantastic.
Oh, by the way, we've got to say good morning, who's on YouTube at the moment, to a good friend, Mark Anthony. Morning,
well
Mark.
Spotted.
Thanks for
morning, Mark.
in. Yes.
Well, yeah.
And he is absolutely brilliant, genius at prompts. For example, if you can't remember a name or something, boom, up it comes in chat. He's excellent at that. But I noticed the viewing figures are picking up on both sides. That's looking very healthy. And I think we're going to get a big audience, possibly this evening, when people will listen to the recording. I think that's when. And I usually found that overnight we get a bigger audience because it's the Southern Hemisphere. People are listening in the Southern Hemisphere whilst we're asleep.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, yeah. Good morning, Blu-ray. Is it Blu-ray? Hi, yeah. Good morning, Blu-ray.
Blu-ray.
Well, of course, those American types are all still in slumberland. I mean, it's outrageous that they haven't bothered to set their alarm clocks and get up in the middle of the night to tune into all this kind of stuff.
But between you and I, Patrick is awake now because he's just sent messages.
He's very sad. He's very sad.
That must be what, 4:30 or something ridiculous in America.
Absolutely. Well, he's on Central Time, so we're 6 hours ahead of him. So it's 4:45 in the morning.
Yes.
You'll be fit for the rest of the day, lad. It's terrible. Aye. Will you get back to sleep?
Well, 6 o'clock as Levens is, but no, when you look at splinter groups, for example, look at the Scouts. Now, what happened, by the way, Patrick's asked whose studio are we using.
Mine.
I think you can.
Yes. Yeah, if you want to call into the show, by the way, if you're getting all the sleep out of your eyes and you've had a cup of coffee, or you're still lollygagging in bed, or whatever, you can call in. I'm not putting it on the screen today. Just go to paulenglishlive.com. There's a link there to call into the show. It'll bring you into the studio here, and you can say a word or two, or you can just tell us what you had for breakfast if you like. We are going to have 2 minutes silence at 11 o'clock. It won't be absolute silence because, as we discussed, as Eric mentioned, 2 minutes of silence on the radio is actually not what radio is for. It doesn't really work.
That's right.
So we've got a nice recording of English birds in the meadow, which we're going to play for 2 minutes. Excellent. And you can make of that what you will, really, because although last night's show was really good in terms of discussing, the whole problem with government for all nations really being the enemy, the organizing force that pulls men into action and makes them slaughter one another. My sympathies and my thoughts are still with all these people that have gone through all this kind of stuff. Whether they were right or wrong is not the point. I guess we all make decisions on what we think we know at the time, don't we? We think we kind of know what's going on, but we don't, actually. And this is the reason why history becomes fascinating, but also rather depressing when you realize that many of our previous generations were being deceived left, right, and center. And I think we have to assume that we are being deceived as well, although not to the degree that previous generations had, because at least we've got these sorts of connection points to talk these things through, and we've got a lot of eyeballs out on all these other sort of areas of hidden history, making it far less hidden and getting a little bit more sort of coherent and knowledgeable about the state of play. I think the current one, Eric, which I know you're aware of, where a great information deception is taking place, is this war in the Ukraine. So-called.
Correct. I mean, and this is what I want to find out more about. So, if people, if you like to call it, especially if you have a father or knowledge of what's happening in Ukraine, that would be interesting. Somebody that might have a relative there or whatever. That would be interesting. And sorry to stop you in mid-flow there. But I'm just thinking, but I think that if you've got a connection, especially with the First or Second World War or modern wars, Ukraine or even Vietnam, because I'm hoping to get Eli on the show soon to talk about his experiences in Vietnam, because he was what they call a grunt. He was actually at the front line. I'm not sure if he was in the Marines, but he was, a frontline trooper. So that will be very, very interesting, because it's like Survival Steve. He's been in the front line as well. And you get a very different view if someone's been in the front line. They've been there, seen it. And I don't know whether your dad got this, but my father especially used to get people telling him what happened who weren't there, and he was actually there. And the frustration was horrendous, because how he took it, I really don't know. He had he had the patience of a saint, but people were quite rude to him often and would disagree with him. Oh, no, it's like this, like that. He said, no, I was there. I was actually there. And I remember a neighbour telling him, well, there was a neighbour that used to say, oh, my, I don't know, some relative, say brother, I don't know, or cousin, was in Gibraltar during the war and never saw any action at all. And my dad said, no, I was in Malta, which is the most heavily bombed place in World War II. More bombs fell on Malta than fell on London during the Blitz. And she's
right.
Oh yeah, but my cousin was in Gibraltar. Didn't say no. He said, oh, and he kept on all the time. I was not in Gibraltar. I was in Malta. And then the neighbour told the people round the area that my dad was in Gibraltar when he was actually in Malta. And people thought, oh, my dad's just making up stuff. Horrendous.
Yeah,
because there's a quite about, I don't know how many miles it is, about 1,000 miles or so from Malta to Gibraltar, and this is the things. And I think this woman did it deliberately just to wind him up, because her husband was exempt from the war because medically unfit, and because they felt they're missing out on something, and that's the thing.
I think I mean that as an anecdote illustrates a lot of things, doesn't it? It did to me as I'm listening to you. I know I've heard you say it before, and I don't mind you saying it again in the future either, because I think these things need to be repeated. And this non-competence and all the sort of little petty jealousies that arise, or envy for credit not due, etc., etc. I mean, this is going on all the time with us as a creature, as an animal, isn't it? There's nothing new with that. People return from war and are treated poorly. I don't think there's anything new with it. Not always. Certainly not if you're the top brass. You get to ride on a big horse at a parade and put medals on your chest, and everybody tells you how fabulous you are. And you're quite pleased about it because you're not one of the millions that are dead that you were organising and all that kind of stuff. But there are all these tensions that are going on, and it's as if the real war's on our... I know this sounds a little bit enlightened and what, but it is on our consciousness. And if people are not aware of what's going on, everybody sort of gets... It's very easy to have your brain hijacked by your emotions. And that's
right.
All the time. That will never, ever stop your entire life. I mean, I'm always trying to... Sometimes I go, why am I getting angry about that? Stop it. Because, it's taken me donkey's years, really, and probably still keeps going on. And it's an individual fight we've all got to go, this is really not helping, Paul. Your response here is really stupid, actually. So I've still got lots of stupidity to wash out of my system. But you get caught. You get caught, don't you? Every now and again, they hijack your emotions with something deadly. Because he's bound to do that. Our primal instinct is to survive, and it's as if that survival instinct is amplified. This is why people get under a lot of stress and anxiety at work. I remember talking about this years ago with a group, and they were saying that people respond, in pressure situations, almost as if a tiger had come into the room. People,
yes.
An overreaction. Well, it's like you can't see it straight because you're fearful of losing your job. This is a great fear that's applied to people in Civvy Street, but it is a type of warfare. You could actually say that everything is about dealing with the conflicts that come up during the day, and some of them are fun in the sense that they're handleable and you can laugh about them afterwards. But when it's war, it's not fun because, at the end of the day, you're looking on the battlefield or wherever, or down the street that's been bombed, and there's a lot of dead people in bits all over the place, and that's not pleasant. I won't get started because you can't describe that fully, but it's
I know what
pleasant.
you mean. But the thing, what it is that the media people make war look like a fun game. Oh, look at that. It's like paintballs, this idea of people flicking paint at each other and things like that. And I can't understand these reenactors and people. But again, it's not for me to criticise. Everybody's different. But the only experience I've ever had, which I wouldn't say is war, was when I worked in Longacre, just round... Well, they have these buildings in London where you have voids, like light voids in the centre, don't you? Where you have sort of built. Well, I was working, strange enough, in an office where Yogi Bear made the first television broadcast.
Oh,
but
right.
I'll show you. And this was when I was working, doing a contract for London Underground. because after the King's Cross fire, they needed to upgrade 96 stations. And of course, they got loads and loads of freelance blokes in, opened up an office, and we're all working there on that. But and none of us, we were from areas like, with architecture, we didn't know about sort of tubes or anything like that. But anyway, that's beside the point. Allegedly, it was the IRA, I don't know, but a bomb went off the opposite side of the void where I was. And it was lunchtime, and I thought the window was going to come in, and it wasn't a bang, it was a boom, it was a thud. And I knew immediately it was a bomb, even though I'd never experienced that in my life before. It was so different to anything else, you remember. And you could then hear fire alarms going off. But I threw myself to the ground, and the wind, because it was old-fashioned windows, sash-cord windows that we had, and they were rattling, and I thought they was going to come in on me. And I was actually talking to someone on the phone and said, "Excuse me, I think a bomb's gone off." Yes. Now, apart from drawing number 3, yeah, excuse me, I think a bomb's gone off. Yes. Anyway, as I was saying, apart from the bomb, and I just slammed the phone down in the end. And what happens is immediately, it's not shock, but your stomach rolls. You think, bloody hell, this is dangerous. I could have got killed there. And it's a feeling you can't explain. And that is very, very mild to what people experienced on the battlefield. In fact, so mild, it's an embarrassment mentioning it. But you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. If anybody else has been involved like that, and we all ordered out the building, and we all had to stand around the corner, and people went quiet, because I thought, bloody hell, we could be in the target zone. There could be another bomb where we're standing. And your imagination goes wild. So that's the only experience I've had, the closest I've ever been, which again is a bit of an embarrassment to mention, because it's nothing compared with what people went through during World War II.
Well, I hope that is the worst of it for you and for everybody. Yeah. We don't, but right now, we know there are parts of the world where people are just literally getting blown to pieces, and
that's right.
It's all like we were talking about last night. It's for the extension of power and control by certain groups that can't live, it would appear, without that sense of power over other people. I mean, no doubt there's all sorts of studies of it, but it's a systemized approach. That I do think that the best policy is to run away. I don't think it's cowardly. What's the point of actually pretending that you can deal with people that are maniacs? You can't. I think there has to be other ways to actually undermine their approach. And of course, on your show and mine and others, people are talking about this all the time, which is great. It's certainly been talked about to a degree that it was never talked about before. So there is it's slow, but it's speeding up a sort of growing awareness of the issue of government. I mean, I was thinking, we're just coming up, we've got a couple of minutes and we're going to go to 2 minutes silence here.
Right.
2 minutes of birdsong. I'll just ease us in.
Excellent.
But there was and we can talk about this afterwards. I've got a clip to play after the silence. We're going to address something that was said on media last week. It's a telling little quote. But I was thinking this morning, I haven't pulled any sound clips from it. It's occurring to me now as we're doing the show. There was this film put together by Peter Jackson called They Shall Never Grow Old, which was about World War I. And the reason why it's compelling, and maybe if we do a follow-up show, or I might even have these for Thursday, they interviewed lots of World War I veterans in the early 1960s. The BBC did. These gentlemen were still alive. And what they say is not what people would expect them to say. Most of them were extremely buoyant about going off to war. It's a strange thing. And we mentioned it last night, didn't we, that one of the compulsions was to get fed. They weren't eating well on Civvy Street, so
that's right.
Eating well was a tremendously attractive thing. They were fed up of being hungry all the time. They got fed well in the army, and I remember there's one quote of a guy. I think he said he was 19 years of age. They're heading to the front. He could hear the bombs going off. And he was desperate that the war wouldn't end before he got there. That's what he was saying. Yes. He said, we're going down the road, and the people coming back, and he said, what's it like up there? He says, bloody hell, mate, and all that kind of stuff. And he thought, great, I'm getting near to it. And you're thinking...
I was excitement. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because remember, the last war had been what? Waterloo. Mm-hmm. That was over, how many years before First World War? It was about 90 years. we hadn't actually had a war.
We got 15 seconds before we go to silence. So
Patrick's just turned up. Patrick's in the studio, by the way.
Okay, so we're just coming up to 11 a.m. We're going to play some birdsong. This is 2 minutes of silence, 2 minutes of birdsong, and we'll be back after this.
Excellent.
And that's in honour and respect of all the people whose lives were cut short by the dread wars, all of them. Nice birdsong.
I've just said, let's bless every innocent person that's ever been involved in conflict, whether they're civilian or armed forces, because for every one person killed, there's a grieving mother, wife, family, and etc. And that's something that should never be forgotten. And also, it affects future generations. That's something that's very much overlooked. And war isn't a game.
No, it's not. It's an extremely, it's a dreadful thing. It's a dreadful thing.
Thanks for that, Paul. That's very poignant. That's brilliant. That was just right. So I'm a little bit choked. It gets me because
well, there's something about birdsong. I think there really is. I think it's very appropriate. I think I was reading actually somewhere that a vet was talking about when he has to go visit owners where he's got to put their pets down because they're beyond recovery, and he plays birdsong, and it calms the animal down and the owner at the same time. They just all get very calm. And it seems to have that effect on everyone because it's just a natural sound, and it sounds like a sound of recovery as well. You do think about those battlefields, and when it all goes silent, the birds come back, the flowers start to grow again, and things regenerate as they always have. It's not much compensation for the people who've just lost their lives. I think it's like they say, it's the ones that are left. There is a documentary series kicking around. That guy from EastEnders, I'm sorry to lower the tone so much, but he went off to Afghanistan and spent time with squaddies out there. It's really extremely interesting. Interesting is not exactly the right word. Compelling stuff, actually, yeah. And the main point that comes across, I mean, they lost a couple of guys there. One lad, 19, and there was an interview with his mother. This is about 2007. 2005, 6 or 7, so about 20 years ago, and got to see. And his mother's basically, obviously, life's never going to be the same again. Particularly when, obviously, soldiers are always young. They're always young. 19's no age to be getting shot dead, and the whole incident was in the documentary, and how they tried to save him. They couldn't. He'd taken a bullet through the side of his, not from the front where his armour would have protected him. It had gone through the side, and that was that. And she was just talking about this. She never expected to be in this situation, and I think that's what the shock is about. I mean, time heals everything. Well, it does, but you can't bring them back.
Well, yes and no, because what happened is people say, like, if a bomb goes off in London for whatever reason, they say, the people will remember this for the rest of their lives and have counselling and this. That's one incident. Mm-hmm. As my father used to say, he said, I had this for 6 years of my life, every day.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
6 years. And you think, even if you're a civilian, you had doodlebugs coming over and all kinds of things like that. But there's one poignant thing that I do remember when I was very young. It must have been before I started school even, so I must have been about 3 or 4 years of age. Both my parents I come from a musical family, and it didn't rub off on me. I don't play a musical instrument, but I don't know why, I just didn't. And my father and my mother used to play the piano accordion. My mother used to play the piano, so did my father. And we were around my auntie's place. She used to live in Stevenage in Hertfordshire. And there was an old First World War veteran there who was a neighbour, friend, I can't remember, but it doesn't really matter. And my parents I think my mum was on the piano, my dad was on the piano accordion. I can't remember. As I say, I was so young. And they played When the Poppies Bloom Again. And this old veteran, tears are rolling down his cheeks. And I've never forgotten that. I was very young at the time. So it must have brought back some memories of the First World War trenches.
It's a shock, isn't it? When you're young, it's a shock when you see grown-ups crying, men. At first, the first time you ever see it. Because, well, we're blokes, we don't do that kind of thing, but it does happen. That's right. It's appropriate. And, of course, particularly around here in Britain, you don't do that. Stiff upper lip, lad. We don't need any of that kind of stuff.
Well, I was so young, and this right. To see this elderly man with just tears rolling down his... Oh, God, to say it's one of my earliest memories. It's quite poignant. Mm-hmm. But you're right, with stiff upper lip, men don't do that, and they didn't do that in years ago. So it must have been something. But I've probably said this before. There was a lot of First World War veterans that lived around where my auntie lived, and there was one. This is a chap that lived near where I live, and he had when you looked at his head, above his eye, his skull was sort of concave. It was weird. It is concave. And apparently what happened is that as he went to go over the top, they blew the whistle for him to climb up the ladders and then go over the top during the First World War. There was a massive explosion. He was knocked back into the trench, and there was a piece of shrapnel that hit him in the top of the head. Yeah. And apparently officers used to go along, because poor sods who were terrified would get back into the trench, and they used to get their gun out and order them over the top. And this officer came up to this chap who was laying on his back with blood pouring out of his head. And he said, "Get over the top." He said, "Look, I'm wounded." He said, "Get over the top or I'll kill you." And he took the safety catch off of his gun, and he was about to shoot. So he had to go over the top holding this piece of shrapnel as he ran forward.
Yeah.
Just imagine that. And luckily he was saved, obviously. He wouldn't have told it, but he said that that's what it was like. The officers, because it was so scary, they would not allow it. So if you could stand up, you went over the top.
It's a long chain of violence, isn't it? From the officer behind his desk with a pen issuing an order, and everybody then is fearful down the line of losing their job or also getting a bullet. So the gun is metaphorically pointed at the next person to be on the receiving end of it until the grunt, as it were, the infantryman, goes over the top and dies anyway. I mean, some of the things in First World War are horrific. I mean, you think about those young lads that were just shot for cowardice, 16, 17 years of age. I mean, it's just by your own people who you're doing your best to help. I think it's the foulest of all things. It's like as if friendly fire is the worst. It's all bad, but it's a ridiculous situation. So it's that psychopathic element in your own governmental power centres that's part of all of this nonsense. And yet, it seems to have been unavoidable all the time down here, as far as we know. I suppose really ancient historians are trying to find a period when it didn't happen. You go back to Greece and all those philosophers, you're thinking, well, they're pretty bright. Well, there were the Peloponnesian Wars. It's going on. It never stops. It never seems to stop.
That's right.
And we've got this bizarre situation. Yeah, sorry.
Well, so what I was going to say is I think it's the psychopath element that's doing it, because psychopaths seem to have this hypnotic effect on people, and they can turn the most placid person into an absolute monster overnight. And I've witnessed it in offices where I've worked. There's something about the effect of a psychopath. Not all psychopaths, but the predatory types, the ones that get to the top of the greasy pole. And I think that's the problem.
Well, I suppose, you could say that they thrive in war situations. They're not all, do you need a few in your army? Well, you've probably got a few whether you like it or not. People who seem to be impervious to danger or have got that attitude where they're not emotionally connected to the outcome or something. They just do things in a berserk way. And then, of course, they get lauded as heroes. And you could say that they are. It's not an easy topic to talk about. I mean, from a distance, here we are talking about it theoretically. I've not been in a situation like that. But, when you get a lot of people together and something kicks off, you've got to look after yourself, because it's like there is this sort of animal madness comes over the crowd. And we mentioned here before, haven't we? I think there was a thing, they did this survey of all the infantrymen across all sides after World War II. And they discovered, the top brass on all sides discovered, much to their horror, that the vast majority, over 50% of the soldiers that fought, were not shooting to kill. They weren't doing that. They didn't like it. They didn't. But as you've mentioned before, their heroism in saving their wounded comrades or anybody that was wounded is off the charts, because there's this natural instinct to preserve life. And that's what makes it, such a ridiculous situation.
Thanks, mate, for mentioning that, because, first of all, Mark Anthony has said something fantastic in chat. He said, the trauma your father and other veterans went through was summed up in the image you had on last night's show, Eric. Their suffering should never be forgotten. Well, that was an image of a young boy in a German uniform who had wet himself, and he was absolutely terrified. And there was another soldier next to him. Now, whether that soldier was shouting at him, whether he was trying to console him, we do not know. But that picture just about sums it up. And that's the thing. It's trauma, and that trauma, the guns may stop at a certain time at the 11th hour on the 11th day, but that war still goes on in the hearts and minds of those that suffer post-traumatic stress disorder, which was then called shell shock, that they didn't really know fully about. And if you've lived with a person such as my father who had untreated shell shock, it's like a long playing record that they keep repeating what happened in the war over and over again. And this is why I don't wish to sound as if I'm showing off, and I assure you I'm not. I had it from an early age, all the graphic details. And I'm not blaming my father. He was my best friend. But I heard things that I probably shouldn't have heard from a young age. And that's why I'm a bit like an old diesel engine. Start me off about the Second World War, and I can just paraphrase it straight off from what my father told me. So, it's because it's been inbred, from a very, very early age, because that was the thing. That was the shell shock coming out. And maybe, I know it sounds a bit weird, perhaps it's as well that his shell shock wasn't treated, because that's how he wrote his book, because his memories were so clear of what happened on those days. It took him 10 years to write his book, but he did it in the end. And that was a uphill task, an uphill struggle, because publishers wouldn't touch it, because it's for one reason, truth. And it wasn't full of heroics. It was actually truth, what happened. And this is the big, big problem all the way through. We get a distorted view of war all the time. And it sickens me when you see the cenotaph with the royals standing there with all their medal ribbons, and what action have they seen apart from in the bedroom? You know, to me, it's hypocrisy.
No, well, they just love dressing up. I mean, but it's all part of the psychological sort of conditioning of the masses, always, that there's something... There are incidences in warfare which are brave, which are courageous, where men do outstanding things in the most appalling situations to recover injured and all this kind of stuff that takes place. And it's difficult to know how you would respond. I mean, I think one of the problems, or what appears to be sort of more glaring now, is that we have this, the technological advances that have been made during wars, of course, are considerable. Things go through the roof. You have to keep improving engines for fighter jets and this, that, and the other. This never stops. There's a knock-on effect into civilized life where you get these improved doodads and technical gizmos. No two ways about it. But the thing that I keep standing back and looking at is that the actual fundamentals that people used to go to war over, like no food, right? We haven't got any food. The tribe down the road, 80 miles away, have got some. We have no choice. We're going to have to go and fight them. And we better do it soon before we're so weak from lack of food. Those things you could say, well, the natural circumstances brought it about. I'm not condoning it. I'm just saying that is what happened, right? Whatever my view is irrelevant. Those things have happened. They continue to happen. But now we seem to be in a position, you could call me Ronnie Optimist, where most of that stuff could be sorted out. It has been sorted out, apparently, in, say, Western Europe and North America and elsewhere. You know, we as a people have sorted a lot of it out. Yet the full benefits of that still do not come to the people properly, creating this sort of causative reason to justify aggressive actions against other people. And it's all avoidable. I mean, I do think you have to keep a military for your nation for defense purposes. And people say, well, we don't even want that, but you're inviting bad behavior from others who will take advantage of you. It would, if history's anything to go by, you know, if you sit there and go, well, we love everyone and we don't have an army or anything, and we'll all come over and we'll share all your stuff until you're dead. I mean, that's what's taking place with the so-called immigration stuff, and you've got you've got that mentality. It's dangerous. You know, is there a happy medium? I operate on the basis that there could be or should be, but you've got this situation where people are going, oh no, our doors are open to everybody. You know, you see these women with placards at the airports, migrants.
Oh yes,
and you're going, what is wrong with, you know, it's insane. Because it doesn't solve the problem anyway. It's just moving it and changing the form of it into something that is much more dangerous, because it's undermining the very fabric of the things that we've built. I mean, if you live your life and build a house and do things, you're going to protect it, aren't you? You put a lot of sweat, human energy into building your little village up with Bob and Betty and whoever it is. I mean, I'm just sort of putting it in storybook version. So your instincts are to protect that and to create that space for your children. That's what this is all about, right?
Well, that's right. But I mean, I saw a funny instance where a chap was going up to these lovey-dovey ladies saying, all immigrants welcome, saying, oh, I'm glad you've mentioned that. How many rooms are you going to let out for an immigrant to come into your house? And I said, oh, well, I haven't got a room actually in my house. I live in a flat. It's very pokey. And everyone had an excuse, but they can't house an immigrant.
Yeah,
Isn't
they
that
can't
strange?
do it. They can't do it. It's your job. You
Everybody
fascist
else
Nazi. You've got to do it because you're the hater. And this is that thing. I'm coming back to that point. I think we mentioned it a few weeks ago. The problem with that mentality is that they don't see real human beings, these people. They're living in an ideology. Everything's abstract to them in terms of supporting this ideology. I don't want you to think that I'm a racist. Well, everybody's a racist. I've said this for years. Everybody is a racist because race exists. And it's meaningless as a phrase. It's only weaponized against one race, and you happen to be in it, Eric, and so do I, for global control purposes. That race, ours, has to be subdued because it keeps creating things that make the presence, I would suggest, of controlling units irrelevant. I mean, if we solve a problem directly, why do you need organizing committees? And the reason that they have them is to make sure that you never, ever really fully solve the problem. So there's always a job for an administrative class down the line. That might seem a bit tenuous, and it's not a biggest part of it, but it's definitely an aspect of it. People are continually protecting their own self-interests, almost on a subconscious level, to keep a series of problems rolling. Listen, I think we're always going to have problems, and if you call them challenges, they become really rather wonderful. But many of the things that we're facing are artificially injected into civilization, and that's what drives you crazy. They're not genuine. They've been created intentionally by the controlling class to justify their continued control, and they don't even realize they're doing it. And this is why you can't even convince the woke people that they are so dangerous. Yeah. You can't do it. It's not possible. Well, if I just tell them or provide them with some facts, forget it. They literally got no traction in their head because you're disturbing their entire idea of who they are. But I'm this kind person. I'm not a Nazi. Well, maybe you ought to think about becoming one. You know, a Nazi's thrown about as a completely meaningless term as well, just like racist is. You know, it's daft. People, and this is down to the fact that people can't think deeply enough, I would suggest, about what sort of situation they're in.
And it's the divide. That makes someone, supposing it was taboo to mention anything negative about Sussex and Hertfordshire. So we would then be very careful not to be insulting, like, I went down to Sussex. It was appalling weather. But it's normally lovely in Sussex. You would have to sort of overcompensate so as not to insult. And this is what gets me, having to overcompensate so as not to insult. Why? Because, if someone is insulted by something, tough. Because we're not going out of our way we like people. I like different races. I think they're very nice in the homeland. For example, as I've often said, if I went to South Africa to see the Zulus, I wouldn't expect to go there and see Highland dancing because that's would be multicultural. You expect to see Zulus. But changing the subject I'd
say multiculturalism is soft warfare. That's what it is. It's not. There's no such thing. It doesn't exist. I've mentioned it before. I want to play you this clip, by the way, because it's appropriate.
Yes, please.
This chap's 100, and he was on BBC. Yes, BBC.
And also, I've got something controversial to mention afterwards, which is very controversial. So I'll let it go.
Well, if it wasn't the BBC, it's always worth foul-mouthing the BBC, the Bolshevik Brainwashing Corporation. Which they are, literally, as Mr. Trump has just discovered. Not that I'm too bothered about him either, but never mind. I'm not trying to upset anybody, the political class. But it was one of these breakfast shows, a bit like this one, Eric, on TV the other week. A bit like our breakfast show here. Our long-running breakfast show that we're doing for the first time ever. But this is Alec Penstone. He's 100 years of age, a veteran of World War II. And this is about a minute long, and this will get the point across. Thanks. Here we go.
Fantastic.
My message is, I can see in my mind's eye those rows and rows of white stones of all the hundreds of my friends and everybody else that gave their lives for what? The country of today. No, I'm sorry. The sacrifice wasn't worth the result that it is now.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
What do you mean by that, though?
What we fought for, and what we fought for was our freedom. We find that even now it's darn sight worse than what it was when I fought for it.
Oh, Alec, I'm sorry you feel like that, because I want you to know that all the generations that have come since, including me and my children, are so grateful for your bravery and all that for service personnel.
The person who said, what do you mean by that, was Adil Ray, not an Englishman.
When they
what do you mean by that? Yeah, even when they're talking to him at the end, they're talking to him like a child. It's just disgusting.
Yes,
but that's
bloody angered me.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The way they spoke to him, they should have let him speak. But what I was going to say, which is a little bit controversial, and was what my uncle said separately from my father, and what my father said separately from my uncle, and then they both said it together. And that is, now I'm not saying everybody that got medals for bravery, was of this ilk. But both my father and uncle, who were both together, they noticed that the people that wanted the medals used to put on like an act of bravery in front of the senior people so as to get the medals.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not saying everybody, but that's what they witnessed many times over. He said these people would just put on an act so they could get an extra medal. And there were some like that. So I just thought I'd mention that. But what that old boy said, I'd like to have heard much more. But you notice they were trying to shut him up by being so patronising and childish to him.
I think he made his point well, though. It's a simple point.
Yeah.
And it's an important point. And the fact that they even aired it is to be valued. And even displayed their patronising thing is also to be valued in the sense that people are beginning to see what the attitude is. Of course, we've had this thing with the BBC recently lying through their editing of this speech that Trump gave. I mean, it's just outrageous. It's outrageous. People are surprised. I'm not. You're not. You won't be surprised. I mean, this is a dung hole. It's an absolute dung hole. And I want to follow that theme through on the show this Thursday, because the image for Thursday is George Orwell, and we're going to look at information manipulation, and newspeak and all that kind of stuff. It's worth. These are topics we can go back to every day if we like. It's an inexhaustible supply of lies, and they're always worth unpicking and taking a new view of. But the way that they dress this stuff up and deal with it is it's terrible. And it's if people are lying knowingly, it's a kind of warfare, isn't it? Because it's whenever people veer away from the truth and don't hold it that you begin to get this sort of systematic lie in place. And that's what we're dealing with. And they're all fearful of losing their jobs, although I see at the BBC the head guy's resigned and everybody's in tears about it. I'm joking, of course. No one's in tears about it at all. We all think it's really rather funny and long overdue.
It is.
But the problem is it'll just get replaced by another globalist stooge. I mean, this is the problem, it would seem.
Mentally sick. We're actually living in a world that's ruled by mentally ill. Well, not ruled, sorry, they're the puppets of the usury scammers, by mentally ill people. I mean, when you look at Starmer, for example, he's not right. There's something mentally wrong with the man. And when you look at most of the politicians that we've had since and prior to World War II, Churchill is another one who's just not right in the head. It's just not, there's something mentally wrong with these people. And the fact is, the way they survive is they use the best PR agents and the best social engineers that our money can buy.
Mm-hmm.
And that, to me, is the difference between government and the mafia. Mafia don't have such good PR. The government has a brilliant piece of PR to convince people that they're working on our behalf. No, they're not. They're there to screw money out of us to pay their usury scammer mates, or not their mates, but their masters. We'll give you power if you find taxes that can screw more money out of the people to make us even more powerful with the people's money. And that's, I think, the root of most wars. As you've often said, Paul, sort the financial system out, because that was what World War II was about. It was about usury.
Mm-hmm.
And the First World War was also about finances as well. And I think once you sort the finances out,
it was. Yeah, I mean, their control system could not operate without their mutual sick relationship with central bankers. And
that's it.
It's not possible to do these things without that. And, the simple point, which is always worth repeating, I feel, is to let people know that they don't know anything about banking. It is a boring topic. It's been intentionally made as tedious and as overly complicated as possible to shut your mind down. You go, oh, not that. And it is emotionally charged. It really is, because, whenever one talks to anybody about money, their first experience is, I haven't got enough of it. The next thing is, give me a lot of money and it'll sort my life out. And it won't. That's my point. It will not do that.
You're right.
It will not change anything. It might do for you and a small number of people, but the overall stupidity of the system will roll on. And it's as if, in part, if you look at what they do, they harness some of the lowest aspects of our character. They do it militarily. what's that phrase? Before a government can take its nation to war, it must first go to war on its own people. And that's what much of that psychological warfare, particularly as it developed rapidly during World War I, which is where the roots of all this stuff came, from Chatham House and the like, and MI6 and all this kind of stuff, using newspapers particularly to wage psychological warfare on people, to goad them or terrify them into taking actions which were going to harm them even further because, we need to do this to avoid that. And they've never stopped applying those techniques through the mainstream media since. I mean, they're basically waging a type of soft war on the heads of everyone 24/7. And this is why, recently, shout out to people that are in the chat. Billy Silver and America First, great to have you on this ad hoc morning show that we're doing because it's Remembrance Day. We've had our 2 minutes of silence. Yeah, good morning, everyone.
And ladies.
What was I just... I've drifted off, you see. I've lost my train of thought. This happens.
Don't worry. I do that. Well, look, I'll waffle for a while if you want.
I should have had breakfast, Why?
Wow. Yeah. I just lose. I'll tell you something. I'll waffle for a little while but what I was going to say was that people don't realise that. All right, officially World War I started in 1914, but go back 20 years, and the press declared war 20 years prior on Germany. And so by the time 1914 came along, the populace was chomping at the bit to go to war with the Hun. They couldn't wait to...
The Hun, that's what they were called back then, weren't they?
That's Hun. Right. It was the Hun.
Dreaded
and it was the Great
evil
War.
Hun. Yes.
And it was the Great War. It wasn't the First World War then. But then the most incredible piece of propaganda ever was in 1939 because in the interwar years between 1918 and 1939, this country was anti-war. Even the Oxford Union, I can't remember it verbatim, but it was no man in this chamber will go to war in a future war. And that was in 1930 something, 3, 4, I don't know, I can't remember. But people, because of the First World War, it was such a traumatic experience that it really put the nation in shock. Even the British Legion, when it was first formed in 1921, and I won't go too deeply into that, but it was formed to, as shall we say, a misdirection, I believe, allegedly, because there was a lot of veteran associations starting out that were rather militant, and we was almost at the point of a revolution. Because remember, before the 1920 Firearms Act, you could actually buy arms in this country over the counter in much the same way as you can buy arms over the counter in some states of America today.
Yes.
So they stopped that in the 1920 Firearms Act. But in 1921, what they did, the powers that be infiltrated militant organizations, pacified them by making up loads of rubbish about the leaders and things like that, because there was almost, shall we say, a revolution in places like Luton and that. And if you look at the newspapers of that time, it'll be on the back sheets because there's like the equivalent of a D notice. Oh no, mustn't do that.
Yeah.
So what happened? The British Legion told people what they wanted to hear, and it was anti-war. And a delegation went to Germany, I think in 1935, 36. Again, it's off the top of my head. Please put me right if I'm wrong. But a delegation definitely went, including a vicar and 2 other people from the British Legion, to have peace talks with the German government, with Mr. H, to avoid a future war. And they said, we don't want a future war. And then as you come up to 1939, I think 1938, Mr. H got Man of the Year award in Time magazine. He was also in 1939, I think April 1939, Homes and Gardens featured his house, his home in Bavaria. We were still very anti-war. And then within a few months, the government managed to flip the attitude of the nation over, like turning on a sixpence. It was unbelievable how they turned the nation into a warlike situation. And people say, oh no, people won't fight in Ukraine today. Yes, they will. Because if they could do it in 1939, the bastards will do it today. All right, they've got the internet, which is a little bit different.
They managed
that's right.
They've managed to do it. And of course, Alec Penstone, that little clip that we just played, of course, if we were able to hold him, he's 100, so, keep his energies of a certain thing. But there's a dreadful story as well, which you're touching upon here, which is certainly with regards to World War II, it would have been completely avoidable were it not for those disruptive agents embedded within the power centres here in London and in New York and elsewhere.
Spot on.
This cabal of financiers, power brokers, etc., they wanted it at all costs. And who runs the newspapers? These things are important. It was the newspapers then. It's still a little bit the newspapers, but it's just electronic media. The form of it doesn't really matter. It's who has the high ground in terms of holding the attention of large numbers of people, because that large number thing breeds agreement, because most people in the large numbers are not exercising their grey matter sufficiently to be able to defend themselves against it, which is why pockets of consciousness like this one is a bit of a grand phrase. Sorry, it's early in the morning, but it's not that early now, is it? It's just coming up to just gone 11:30 here. But that's really, part and parcel, I think, of what we're supposed to be doing here. I think, you mentioned this thing about a revolution after World War One. It was similar after World War II over here. I've mentioned it before. They changed the tax laws on the folk clubs in England about 1947, I think it was, 46 or 47. Yeah. Because the squaddies that came back, MI5 and these guys had their agents in these folk clubs. Why folk clubs? Because the beer was cheap. They came back. The folk clubs, you could listen to old type music with your mates from the war, drink beer as cheap as you could get it anywhere. And they had their agents in there earwigging on the conversations, and they went, we're not far off here from a revolution in England. And these were guys, of course, that had come back and seen people burnt to bits. You wouldn't be able to physically intimidate them the way that we are physically intimidated today. That we're a softer generation. In one way, I'm glad of it. I'm glad of it. In another way, you can see that there's a weakness. There's always a yin and a yang to all of these things. You go, we can't be all fighty. Yeah, well, unfortunately, if you're not, these guys, bullies, are going to make hay on their own terms, and they will hurt you. You don't think so? No, we're all in it together. We're not. There is no we here. In all nations, there is no universal we. When they use the word we, they're addressing their cadre of controllers at the top, their little gang. They're in the club, the rat sack. That's what they're in. They just deceive everybody thinking, we're all in this together. We're all going to fight together. It's what Churchill made hay on. And it's not that he can't write. And he did say some very intelligent things. But unfortunately, the context for his life is completely opposed to making this country good. And, it's this thing with hindsight, you look back. But if you were alive and I were alive at that time, we would have just as likely been bamboozled as everybody else was, because all you and I would have had would have been the newspapers and the radio, nothing else. Nothing else. But of course, when they came back in 1945, these people did have something else. They had an experience of going through hell and back on all sides. It was tough here. It was even tougher in the conflict between Germany and Russia. Something like 65% of all the energy and death of the war took place there. That's the epicenter of it. Who's behind that? The London and New York bankers. They're behind that.
Correct. Yes.
They're absolutely behind it. And it's always this line. And Alec Penstone might value knowing that. I remember, I've mentioned it to you before, during the last 10 years of my dad's life, and he had a good innings. He died at 90 in 2015. And he signed up for the Royal Navy when he was 17 years of age, because if you enlisted, you could choose which branch of the services you wanted to go in. And he floated like something that floats like a cork, my dad. He could float in 2 feet of water. I think I've mentioned this before. It used to really irritate me when I was a kid, because I'm like my mum. I've got 12 and a half. My feet are sort of just over size 12, right? I've got huge bones. Wow. I'm really big boned, right? And so I just sink. I'm sure I've got negative buoyancy. It is a condition. I'm not making it up, right? I have to sweat in buckets to just stay afloat. My dad would get in 2 feet of water and just float like a porpoise, just spitting water out of his mouth. He goes, "You just do this." I'm just going under all the time. So he signed up for the Navy. But the last 10 years of his life, I had these phone conversations with him. And my mum was listening in on the other line. She'd pick up the other phone downstairs and they'd be listening away. The phone calls would be at least an hour every time. This went on for years. And they were really the best conversations I had with him about anything. We touched on all sorts of stuff. But I was introducing the idea that the whole of that war was not right. It's bogus in many ways. I know it genuinely took place. That's not what I mean. But the actual reasons given to the people were completely out of whack. He was totally open to this. And I said, look, there's no good guys in it. I said, but the least worst, and by a considerable margin, are the Germans. I said, we would have done exactly what they did if we'd been in the same situation. And so, everybody judges all these other races from their own perspective, and it's a mistake, generally. It really is a mistake. And, of course, he's the most demonized guy on the face of the earth. And that's understandable from the point of view of what most people think they know about that conflict, but they just don't know enough, and they're never going to get to know it through the school system. Although I wouldn't mind being in charge of it for a few years and rearrange history lessons. That'd be fun.
Yes.
Wouldn't that be fun?
It would be real fun. But I mean, the only nation that I don't understand, and it's because of my own ignorance, is Japan during World War II. I've heard of veterans who said that who were POWs, especially on the Burma Railway, and they absolutely many of them said the Koreans were worse than the Japanese, Korea was a Japanese ally. And they said they were more brutal than the Japanese. But I really don't understand the Japanese side of the war. And I'm trying to learn more about it. And there was on Red Ice Creations, there was a chappie who was an Italian who could speak fluent Japanese and English.
Right.
And he reckons, now I'm not making an opinion, I do not know, I was not there, okay? And he reckons that many of the atrocities were hyped up by the Allies, and they didn't happen as they were said. And his interview was actually taken down by the powers that be. That's when Red Ice was actually on YouTube. Now, I don't think that's true. And the reason I don't think that's true, because I've spoken to lots of veterans who were on the Burma Railway and were captured at Singapore when I was young. And what they said about the brutality of the Japanese army was absolutely horrendous. Really horrendous. But then when you look at the Japanese today, look how peaceful they are. And it's all to do with this kind of what I call hypnotism, this hypnotizing people. Now, I mean,
well, I think the Japanese thing, apart from it obviously being a setup, the whole Pearl Harbor thing being a complete setup, which is still not fully out in the public domain, but it is. Roosevelt knew all this stuff and wanted it to happen, just like Churchill did, because they're both of this in the same club. But I think another aspect of Japanese culture, I remember reading this sometime, is that Japanese schooling at the time for the young men had a hellish bullying culture, really over the top, and that many of them behaved terribly in war because they'd been bullied so much. It's almost like they got their own back for all the sort of torture, as it were, and cruelties that they'd suffered as school children in the Japanese school system. I mean, it's something I need to explore a bit more if I get some time. But that might explain.
Here. I don't
they
know.
Definitely have a reputation for that's come to us. They're not like that now. They're, and in many ways, the Japanese model, although they've got to them now by getting them to take migrants in, is admirable. I've mentioned it before. I've got a good friend, a Canadian friend, who's been living out in Japan for like 35 years. That's plenty of time. He hasn't got the vote. He'll never get it. And he says, I'm not entitled to it. We have this situation now, don't we? Just coming back to what's happening here and now. And there's a good comment from Soma Koma. Shout out. Good morning to you. Writes, we're in the age of fifth generation warfare. There is no distinction between combatant and civilian. No ethics as usual. This is true. It's been extended in sort of so-called soft war, where it's going on nudge all the time. And Frederick Blackburn talks about this a great deal, and he's right to do so because it's accurate. All of it's as if the very sort of tools and technology of civilization that we've developed have been weaponized against us. In terms of advertising, you see the sorts of individuals that are in advertising to promote something that nobody wants because it's not natural. It's unnatural. Nature doesn't want it.
You're right.
If nature wanted it, it would have been like this a long time ago. It doesn't want it. And people have got a right and a drive to determine sort of the way that their day works as they see fit. And it's this thing called in-group preference. An out-group preference. We've all got it. Great. That's cool. That's why you get distinct cultures in the world, because everybody's got in-group preference. Because it means generally, even though you're going to have spats with people in your in-group, you're operating on a similar vibrational wavelength. You understand one another. It's like what we were talking about yesterday. You know, we use sarcasm here. The English use it all the time. We're extremely sarcastic and sort of permanently trying to wind people up. It's just part and parcel of the natural banter of the British. This is what we do. Some people come in and they get offended, or they can't read it right. It takes a while to sort of see what we're doing. It's actually a sign, I think, of affection in many ways. In other words, if you're not being picked on, you're not worth that. And,
I agree. And that's part of our humour, because all humour is bad taste. It's true what Mel Brooks said. Humour is bad taste. It is bad taste. I mean, just got to accept it. But what I've noticed now, what they're doing, where they used to have newspapers to turn people's minds, they're using nudge a lot. And I've noticed this on a lot of YouTube videos, which I suspect may be government ones. So there was one on, if you look at all the newspapers that are talking about there's going to be a revolution, there's going to be an uprising in Great Britain, all that, you notice they're the establishments ones. So whenever you see anything by the establishment, you know it's a psyop. And I've noticed there was one the other day about how we're going to go into starvation. And as they were talking about what happens, basically, is in Cuba, and there was two other countries I can't remember. What they did, they relied on imports and thought more of money than food. So they destroyed their agricultural area, like we're doing, by building on it and expanding. And then the imports stopped. And, of course, the country went into starvation because the people who had the knowledge of farming had gone. Now, in this article, I thought, well, that's interesting. It said, and problems caused by climate change. I thought, oh, hang on, there's a nudge, because most of us realise that, well, if the climate didn't change, I'll be a bit worried. This climate change nonsense is to do with making money. It's nothing to do with the climate at all. It's rubbish. And then it went on a little bit more, and you notice all the way through, there's these little nudges. And I'd be interested for our listeners to make a note of these places where something is mentioned as if it's a matter of a fact when it isn't, like climate, agendas and things like that, all very, very subtly done. So it registers on your subconscious. And I'm noticing this on social media a heck of a lot. And I think that's what they call the 77 Brigade, or whatever you want to call it, but it's a psyop. And people would just read over that and just carry on, and that would register on their subconscious. But I'm picking it up. There's these little nudge units. So I think we've got to beware of nudge. That's what we've got to do. Because I know the tax people use nudge in their adverts a lot. So that's my little word of warning. And what my granddad always used to say to me, watch out for the infiltrators. That's what he used to always say. Because he witnessed how the Labour Party got infiltrated in the 1920s and 30s. Because the Labour Party that was formed in 1907 was nothing like after the 1930s. Nothing like at all. It got totally infiltrated and taken over. Yeah,
all of these things start off. You look at all of them. They start off with a rightness, a soundness in the thinking of the founders of these things, and then they get hijacked and they fall apart. And it's because people find wriggle room in there, and they can make hay and profit at the expense of their colleagues. And there is a sort of character that's quite happy to do that, and they're very dangerous. Not at the beginning, but once that seed is in, it begins to gestate, doesn't it? And it starts to sort of pull things apart. Maybe this explains why politicians just behave as permanent liars. It's okay being bright and saying, I want to affect things. But obviously, people that become politicians are bright, but they're not bright enough, because they've not worked out that by going into that space, they're going to lose all of the sort of good-heartedness. Let's assume that they may have had some, right? It's a big assumption. But any that they've got will be beaten out of them. It'll be coordinated out of them. Over here they have this thing called the whip, and if you lose the whip, that's it, and you're out, and you haven't got. You're not getting your salary as an MP if you get bounced out. And the whole thing is, it doesn't breed for honest and honourable government, which is why you can't have it. I mean, what's that thing? Aristotle was saying something about fiat money. Now, fiat money is money created by diktat. And in principle, there's nothing wrong with it. Actually, I'm not. But he said, there's nothing wrong with fiat money so long as we get godlike intelligence for kings. In other words, what he was saying is, we're never going to get that. You're not going to get that, right? And Plato talked about philosopher kings. I think I mentioned it last night. So, and yet, we have these characters, don't we, in our history that we view with rose-tinted spectacles, like King Arthur. And rightly so, from what you read about it. I'm sure he didn't get everything right. But you go, okay, and King Arthur really did exist. In fact, there's more than one. There's at least two King Arthurs. I'm quite serious. There's one that fought the Romans. There's another one later on, about 700. We've got King Alfred. Right. King Alfred really was great. He did some incredibly sound things, and he extended kindness to his enemies after he'd defeated them. And they all sort of got roped in, after the big battle. And then he invited them to a feast a few days later, and they all ate, and they all said, sorry about all that. Things like that. So it's, the whole history of us is one of a conflict and resolution and good times, and then somebody gets a bee in their bonnet and it all kicks off and gets very, very pear-shaped. These things happen repeatedly. Can we stop it? That's the thing. Can it be stopped? Or can it be contained in such a way that it doesn't spread civilization-wide? And that's really the threat that they're using all the time. I mean, all the people, I suppose, that subscribe to globalism think it's for the best. They've got to be a part of them that think that they'll be saying things like, well, look, when you were all running around as nations, there was just all these wars going on. If we can just all come together and love one another, it's going to be great. I think what's missing from that, the people that say those things, is that they haven't tunneled in to who was causing all the wars. And the primary cause of all the wars, certainly over the last 400 or 500 years, has been the globalist mentality. We are going to create a one-world government. It's come in many forms, from the formation of the Illuminati in 1776. You think about all those wars. Ever since the Bank of England got created in 1694, it's just been non-stop. Absolutely non-stop. People go, it's just normal. No, it isn't. It's totally abnormal. It's created by this banking force that has organised it. You're going to fight a war. The army needs equipment, doesn't it? Needs to be fed. Who's organising? These things are minutely planned. It's a colossal amount of logistical planning. Comes in great when you're running railway systems for peaceful purposes, if you've got that ability and you develop it. But it's a terrible thing. Somebody organises all these things. They don't just, all right, let's go and have a fight. What are you talking about? We need to prepare for 2 years. Oh, right, that's a conscious decision then. Yeah, it is. And someone's been doing it,
But then you look at the politicians now. I mean, as I was saying, anyone that aspires to be a politician is good enough reason for them not to be. But you look at Churchill, what you said on your show, which was spot on. He said a lot of very good things until he was paid off and he became an art forger. He was an art forger? Yes, he was. And if you look up... what's his name now? I can't think of his name. He wrote a lot of books about Churchill and that. That's the man. And one of his talks, he said that Churchill was an actual art forger because he went under a pseudonym of a famous artist whose name escapes me. And he sold his paintings in galleries that were just outside Paris. So people thought they were getting a bargain from this artist that was reasonably famous, paid over the odds for it, when it was in fact Churchill did the paintings. So
he's not above and beyond a bit of deceit, was he? He had a.
Well, he got his debts paid off, didn't he? £19,500 debt, literally paid off by the City of London. Mm-hmm. So that's funny. Why was he pushing for war all the time? Isn't that odd? And he would not hear of any peace negotiations. Slap my thigh! How amazing!
When he was in the States in the 1920s, first of all, he was warned off to get all his money out of stocks just prior to Wall Street. So he was okay. All right. Yeah, he didn't get hammered by that. But before I think during the 1920s is when he was pulled into it. They obviously had earmarked him as a man susceptible to bribery, which he was, because he was a profligate spender. And he was a drunk, he was a sodomite. And he ticked every box in terms of being controllable. And he was intelligent and he was articulate, and unfortunately he used his intelligence and articulation to bring about ruin. And I think, but when he was there, before they fully got him over to his side, he was hit by a car in New York, all right? There was a little warning shot across his bows. That's the way I read it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it does. It's a bit like Farage with the plane crash, doesn't it?
Yep.
Allegedly,
these things, these things happen. And so that's what I'm saying. If you go into that space, forget it. Anybody that's in that space, forget them. I include everybody in America as well. Trump, the lot. Putin, every single one of them. What, you think just one guy can do what he likes? It's just childish. It's complete nonsense. They've got poisoners. They've got threateners. They've got a whole battalion of people, scum, that will do anything for money. Quite happy to assassinate people. Love it. That's their job. They'll do it as well. And they let you know that they're going to do it. I think I mentioned to you before, the guy that showed me a lot about banking, and he did have integrity, but he was kind of sociopathic as well, I think, in retrospect, looking at him. He had a very cold part of his personality, which when you were in the presence of it was not particularly fun. Let's put it that way. There was no palling around. It was kind of, what? I thought we were sort of building something together, and he got really clear at times that that wasn't the case. But I remember him telling me that whenever he was doing financial contracts with people, and these for to do with government treasury bonds and the purchase thereof, so things upward of $1 billion, hundreds of millions, these sheets of paper, it's complete madness. At least he was decent enough to tell me how it all worked and how he hated it, but he was involved in it, almost like a cuckoo in their nest. But he told me, he said, everybody that he does a deal with, he had something on. I said, what do you mean? He said, personal information. He said, it's awful. He said, I'm telling you, he said, it's awful that we have to do this. He said, but if we don't do it, these people will welch on the deal. And I can't have that. It's just not going to happen ever. And it never did. Because they receive a communication, a letter, something, whatever you can imagine, right? Something highly unpleasant is going to happen if you don't follow through with what you're contracted to do, and you will follow through with it. And they would bring to bear all sorts of pressure on people. And this is really the milieu that the politicians are floating around in. I mentioned it. I was on Ria's show on Sunday, which was a lot of fun. Really good slot. I'm on there every couple of weeks. Really enjoy it. It's very different sort of pace to what we're talking about now. Different sort of structure. Works in a different way, and has got a lot of merit because of that. It's good fun. And Liz Truss has just done another interview with the Daily Express about 10 days ago. And I've got to give her a due. She's calling it out as it is. And what I think the interviewer is criticising Rachel Reeves. And the newspapers will be criticising Rachel Reeves, and for good reason. But this is just the front end of the story. The back end of it, and Truss mentions this again, and these are all sort of contributory factors to wars coming about, all this stuff, it all interlinked. She said, basically the gist of it, she was saying, you're missing the point. She's not in control. She's not. The Chancellor of the Exchequer has not been in control of exchecking anything of any value for decades around here. It's a joke. And so without anybody understanding who's really in charge, where they live, what their inside leg measurement is, and all that kind of stuff, the civil service and then these permanent secretaries, there's 38 of them or something, who never get fired, and the governors of the Bank of England, who are a private cartel owned by families elsewhere in the world, same with the Federal Reserve, basically can put so much pressure on a national economy that politicians who are in the economic departments, by definition, have to lie to the people so that they don't come in harm's way. Maybe there's some merit in an argument to say, look, we need to forgive the politicians. I know this sounds ridiculous, right? We need to forgive them. But the forgiveness has to be a communication that goes along the lines of, we understand that you're not in power. We understand that you can't say that because you've got an act to keep up. We understand that you're going to keep lying to us because you're compelled to do that, because if not, your life will be threatened. We suggest you leave. And this is why participation in democracy is a terrible thing, because it keeps this story, this fiction going. it seems to me, in the minds and hearts of the people. They think, well, this is genuine. See, I voted for that party and they're not doing what they promised to do. Of course not. They can't. They can't do it.
They never can. And they won't last very long if they do it. That's the thing. I mean, I think there was a comedian that said that when a president is elected into the United States, they're shown into a room that's full of cigar smoke, and they show a film of Kennedy shot from a different angle of him being assassinated. And then they turn the film off and they turn around. Any questions, Mr. President?
No, just what my agenda is, I think, is the punchline, isn't it?
Yes.
I think he does a bill. I've forgotten his name. He died in his early 30s. Brilliant guy. I'm seeing his face and I can't get his name. Texan he was. A Texan. Great guy. I think he was from Texas. Wonderful. Very funny guy. Very sharp.
I can't. Yeah.
He made a big name over
I wonder
here.
If he died of
I don't think
causes.
he was getting as much traction in the States. He came over here in the 90s and got like almost a cult following. Yeah. Very sharp, very bright guy. Very warm, connected personality. Just a good lad. You know, really good. I can't remember his bloody name.
And that's it. I mean, when you look that more people have been killed by their own governments and all the wars put together, that really makes you question what is really going on. And that is a fact.
By logical extension, given that what you've said is true, and I completely agree it is, if more people have been killed by governments, but governments are controlled by private cartel of banks, who's the causative force of all this conflict? By logical deduction, it's the private ownership of banks. That's the problem. Interestingly, in this interview with Liz Truss, the goofy interviewer, it's the only way to describe him, right? Well, it is. It's asinine. It's like it was like a high school kid. It was really. I'm going, what? You know, has anybody? Well, the journalists in the past, at least if they were seasoned, they had something about them, right? Even if they were bullshitting in a more sophisticated way. Yeah, but this is just sort of like larking around stuff. And she says to him about, she's talking about Andrew Bailey, who's the current governor of the bank. And she's saying they're all globalists. That's why you can't stop the migration problem, because they want it. They want it. The banks want it, right? So what the banks want, they always get, because they've got so much power to coerce and buckle the lives of any opposition in that way. We've got to find a different way of dealing with this. Anyway, she puts a question. She said, who do you want in charge? She said, the governor's the Bank of England or the government. And he said, well, I don't trust the government. I said, they don't know anything about banking. So the bankers. She says to him, well, you're a globalist then. He starts laughing, I think the penny might have dropped. It looked as though it had taken an hour. You're a globalist. That's what you want that. You see, if democratic electing of politicians has got any worth at all, and it doesn't, by the way, but if it did, then your government would be in charge of the bank, and it would make decisions that could keep the bulk of its civilization out of harm's way. But it doesn't do that because it's not. And I think, because this stuff is not taught at school or university or anywhere, and I think in my lifetime, and yours, Eric, it won't be, except in spaces like this, we can't expect to see any change in the type of individuals that go into politics or that go into banking. There isn't going to be one. The system is working perfectly for them. And one of the it's perfect. Works perfect. They've got everybody thinking that democracy is somehow good, both here in the States and here and across Europe. People report on elections as if they're going to make any difference at all. They never, ever, ever have. Ever. They don't, because the government always remains in charge in the background. And those are the people we've got to get. They need to be in the newspapers. Unfortunately, we can't do that because they own the newspapers. So that's why they never appear in them. But at least we're a bit closer to the nub of the naughtiness, as it were.
That's right.
I think we are.
Even so, I'm optimistic, because throughout history, the unexpected usually crops up to change the course of history. For example, when Mao was in power in China, people thought we're never going to get rid of all this. Well, all right, China is still totalitarian, but people are at least a little bit freer, and I might be talking out the back of my neck because I haven't been to China, but they appear to be a little bit freer than they were under Mao. Even though they've got this ID system and all this load of crap that's ruling them. But I think that things do change in a natural way that we don't expect. And the thing with the woke and the lefty ideas, they're unnatural. And nature always kicks back. And it will kick back hard. So just watch this space. I actually do think that nature will kick back against these unnatural people. And so I don't know what the unexpected will be.
What's the Chinese thing? Don't we have to be like water with this? Haven't we got to be like water? There's some bit of Chinese wisdom about acting like water, fluid. You got to move around it, and it is. We've got to become like damp, like fungus in a building. Suddenly, they think they're in charge of it, and they're going one day, and there's just mold everywhere, and it's us popping up in little clusters all over their building. I'm going, yep, it's nature. Nature will assist us if we can stay open to it. I think, and intelligent enough to stay calm and not pick fights that we can't win. There's a big history of that.
Form. Yeah. And sorry, I didn't mean to
it's fine.
Cut in on you, but also form hubs where we eventually ignore government out of existence. Mm-hmm. So for survival, we form little tribes or hubs where we are aim for being self-supporting. We can't be 100% self-supporting, but we'll endeavour to be as self-supporting as possible. Similar to what Richard Vobes is doing, where he's got a plot of land and he's growing his own food. And I think that there are little areas where I think we've got optimism. And as you said some time ago, can you imagine if just a fraction of the wealth that these usury scammers, such as the Rothschilds, have got, was put into the third world? I think we'd have boats going across the channel going the opposite way with illegal immigrants scurrying to get back home. And a little glimmer of hope was that vehicle that they was making in Kenya. Unfortunately, I think it's gone bust, hasn't it, the firm now? You're saying that electric car that would be
$5,000 for an electric car. Simply put together. Very good range. It was destroyed. I'm going to say it's destroyed by economic warfare. This is the thing. So you've got people creating amazing stuff. I came across something yesterday. There's a British firm called, I think it's YASA, funny name, YASA or something like that. Electric engines. You see, I'm not against electric vehicles per se. I'm against the fact that they're going to be augmented to be used as part of the control system, which is obviously the whole reason why they're pushing them, right? The idea of an electric engine is cool. They're pretty nice. I don't like the sound of them much. Particularly because I watch Formula One and I still want V10 engines back that howl, because I just think I want a visceral experience. But this is me being a child. This is not important for the grand scheme of things. There's a company anyway in Oxfordshire, I think it is. It's an offshoot of a research project from Oxford University. They've been bought up by Mercedes, lock, stock and barrel, about 3 years ago, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. And they've created an electric engine, which is about to go into production, which is astonishing, this engine. It's absolutely ridiculous. Whoa. It produces 100 horsepower per kilogram of weight, or something like that. It's absolutely mad. And they're building them for performance things to start off with, right? So you'd put one in each wheel. They sit in the wheel.
I know what you mean.
So every single wheel has got its own engine. It's amazing. And it's one of these transport things that would transform things. Imagine those engines being tooled up and stuck in those tankers. Those tankers are the most polluting things. I'm not for pollution, by the way. It's just that climate change is a complete joke. That's nonsense. But
I'm against pollution.
Yeah, me too. I don't want it. It's dirty. Who wants it? Diesel engines that they put in those tankers are the most polluting things on the face of the earth. Literally, I think in gross tonnage of pollution. They're unbelievable, those things. And there's tons of them floating around, keeping the world economy going, because we need that with all those containers. You could put electric engines in those things. All the solutions have been found. You can't apply them rapidly enough and effectively enough because the middleman, the bank, has to take its cut. This is why it's a problem.
Yes.
Oh no, we can crash your markets, and they can. This is the problem. They can do that. So this is the fifth generation warfare that was mentioned earlier, and that's what it is. Yeah. We're in this situation. It's why everything feels not right. It's why kind of the soul of civilization's been chewed up, turned into this sort of technocratic idiot space. Like we mentioned about Mouse Utopia. Everything's perfect. You're not threatened by anything. Yeah, but we're not alive. We don't want that. We don't want, we talked about electric cars, didn't we? The electric car that I want is, I'm quite happy to have it run the engine. I don't want one of those bloody screens. I think they look crap. And I want the doors to be opened by me with my hand. And I want to be able to wind the windows down. I want an option. I want the option.
Yes,
you want electric, you have them.
Here.
So you stick electric engine in, you make it really good. There's also these things coming out called sodium batteries. Don't know if you've heard about them. They're amazing, right? They're about half the weight, twice the power. Sodium is readily available, very cheap, much more readily available than lithium. There's some Chinese company is doing it. So it's whoever controls these. These are like pressure points, aren't they? They've controlled people through going to the petrol pump. That's why the oil industry still keeps going, because they've got to control the banking system.
That's right.
Is basically oil tokens. When you're spending $1 or £1 or €1, you're spending an oil token, because that's the number one traded commodity.
That's right.
It's
and that's why they've banned
labyrinthine. Yes.
That's right. With diesel cars, they're down on diesel cars. Why? Because you can run a diesel car on sunflower oil or chip oil, anything like that. And the smell that comes out the exhaust is of a fish and chip shop. It's quite nice. So you walk along the road, lovely smell. But you see, that takes that out the hands of the oil industry, because with petrol, you can only run a petrol engine on petrol, or have it converted to run on some sort of gas. Whereas diesel, you can run it on just about any bleeding thing. It'll go. But that is the problem. And yes, I am totally against pollution, but pollution and the environment nonsense are two separate issues, because they're creating more pollution with this hot air waffle, because that is an agenda.
Yep.
And that's the thing. There's a difference in agenda. I mean, I'm very pleased that they've cleaned engines up, because I remember my neighbour had a taxi and my car was covered in diesel spots. And then all of a sudden, his taxi, he had an engine in it from Nissan, and it was as clean as a whistle. You wouldn't have clouds of blue smoke coming out the back of it. Just drive off perfectly okay. He's retired now. He doesn't have a taxi. But, these different things. And I remember walking along in London with the back of my throat really, really, really sort of feeling awful with the pollution, the problem with the pollution. That's gone.
Well,
nice.
Mr. Diesel,
I'm happy
by the way,
about that.
Mr. Diesel was killed. He was assassinated by the British, you'd be pleased to know.
That's good of us.
Yeah, because he'd done something to the engine that was going to knock the oil industry out.
That's right. Peanut oil, I think, wasn't it? It was originally.
It runs on anything.
Yeah.
It runs even on the fat from Chinese restaurants. And Jonathan Hiller's written in here Wing Chun. And at first I thought he was referring to his favourite Chinese restaurant, but he wasn't. A few moments ago I was talking about being like water. That's what it means, Wing Chun. And Blu-ray says that Bruce Lee said, "Be like water." Be like water.
Yes.
I shouldn't have said that, should I? That's very wrong of me.
That's right.
So,
yes, was it keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer. That was The Art of War with Sunset, or whatever his name is.
Sun Tzu. Sunset.
An Imanol, yes.
There's a wonderful, there's a great tale of Sun Tzu. We're veering off a little bit here. Actually, it is about warfare, because Sun Tzu's very interesting stuff. It's a book everybody should have, I think, The Art of War. There was I don't know if it's in there, but there's an anecdotal story of him, it probably is, where he was hired by a warlord, because, as you know, China was a big warring place, a bit like England for a long time, everybody kicking 10 bells out of each other. And he's called in by a king to get his army into shape. And he said, "I hear that you can turn any group into an army." And he said, "Yes." He said, "Well, I want you to do it with my concubines." He says, "Okay, fine." So there's 100 of them, maybe a few more. And the king sat there. He said, "I'll start tomorrow." So he's got 100 pikes for them, and they're all issued with a pike. And they're told to stand in rank and in a square or whatever. And so he gives this instruction for them to stand to attention or whatever. And they all burst out laughing. Right? And so he lets the laughter die down. So he gives the instruction again, shows them what to do, tells them all to do it, and they laugh even more. They find this absolutely hilarious. So he asks for the name of the head concubine and instructs them that he's going to behead her, take her head off, at which point the king stirs from his throne, or the emperor, whatever he was called, and he's not too happy about this. And he comes up to him and he said, "You can't do that." He said, "You don't understand." He said, "When you put me in charge, I'm in charge. All right? You're not in charge anymore. You've instructed me to turn this into your bodyguard, and I'm going to do that." So he beheads the head concubine. Then he gives the instruction. Wow. He then gives the instruction to all of the other concubines, and discipline is immaculate. They all stand to attention, right? Now, I'm not condoning this. Killing people and taking their heads off is not a good thing. Rich coming from an Englishman, we have a long tradition of people taking their heads off, kings and things like this. There's a lot of that going on over here. But it's the point that he's making, which is don't muck about with Sun Tzu, basically. And the king knew his place. He said, "You're not in charge. You gave that all to me. Yeah. You haven't got any power here, right?" That's that, done. And went ahead and they became a great bodyguard. But I don't suppose he ever got over losing his head concubine. It must have been a bit of a blow, that. I don't know what point I'm trying to make. Times are tough.
Well, it's a bit like... I mean, I had a girlfriend that had this... I can't stand Yorkshire Terriers. And this bloody Yorkshire Terrier hated my guts. Used to growl. And even bought the little bastard a bone. It growled even more. So one night when all her family were watching the television... this thing cornered me in the kitchen and it was chucking it down with rain. So I grabbed it by the back of the neck and chucked it outside and closed the door quietly. And they said, I can't remember the name of the bleeding thing. And they said, "Where's Fufu," or whatever its name was, because it used to have a little bow around its neck. And I was sort of playing the old innocent, Anyway, they could hear this outside because it was sport up to the eyebrows. They opened the door and this sort of thing that looked like a drowned rat came in. And there they were. Going around, they had a hairdryer. Oh, poor Fufu. How did it get outside? I don't know. And, from that day onwards, that dog respected me. It would not growl at me after that. Because I showed that I was the top dog, not him. And I think that's the thing. It's wolf pack attitude. And you notice there's the dog whisperer. He used to tell people that sometimes you've got to be cruel to be kind. You've got to show the dog that you are the head of the pack, not them, because they're pack animals. And I think that in many ways humans are pack animals. They look for the the leader of the pack and that type of thing. And I think that's probably our downfall. Really.
Well, it is. We're trying to be civilized, aren't we? There's some good comments here in the chat. I think, Eric, with your permission, we should probably wind up because there wasn't a set time for this. And I know you have to go and buy underwear and things like this and stuff.
No, it's Iceland. Iceland shop. I need the management are very, very worried that without me spending money there, they might make a bit of a loss this week.
Okay, so I say we're going to wrap up at. How about we wrap up in about 10 minutes at 12:30? That should give you enough time to go off and do.
That will be
Yeah.
Excellent. That would be perfect. Yes.
I made it a little 2-hour slot here. I've really enjoyed actually broadcasting on a morning. It's different. It feels different, doesn't it? I quite enjoy it, actually. Yeah. Nice comment here from Soma Coma. This is going back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago. A quote from Augustine of Hippo. Thus a good man, though a slave, is free, but a wicked man, though a king, is a slave. For he serves not one man alone, but what is worse, as many masters as he has vices. Yes, this is true. And Billy Silver writes, counter-groups, when we were talking about insurgents, as counter-agents, I think are encouraged, I agree, rather than stamped out, because it's more effective to take over a genuine integrity than a fake. That fake an institution of integrity and sell that to the public. This is true. Yeah. Was it Lenin that said this? The best way to control the opposition is to be it. And I think this is, these are these invasive forces.
Yes.
They come in all nice, and they might even be very charming, and therefore they beguile the audience. And after a little while, they start to shift the narrative, they nudge it in a certain direction. One of the things I've noticed as well with regards to the Ukraine thing on YouTube, there's a lot of videos now about how fantastic British tanks are. I don't know why I'm getting this stuff. I think it's because I've been looking at things at the history of the jet engine recently with Frank Whittle and stuff like this. And it's coming through, all these sort of military feeds keep coming through to me. I'm not particularly interested. But they're bigging it up. What's not being said, of course, is that the Ukraine situation is basically it's a brothers' war of the worst sort. It really is. Ukrainians are Russians. And they all want this. Putin could have ended this a long time ago. This is why I don't trust none of them, right? Not one of them. They've all got a little role to play. Why can we cannot trust these people. We don't even know them. I'm not going to go out and have lunch with him or anything. And I mentioned years ago, he was Putin as a young man in Britain in the early 1980s doing the power gen training, which was a part of Royal Arch Freemasonry. Now, Power Gen is a company over here. Might not. It was a power company. It had a big disused power generation station in Birmingham, and they had people like John Scarlett and other some bint who heads the whole thing up. British Royal Arch Freemasonry. These are the spooks. These are part of the super spooks that are running all these sorts of things. And I think Stella Rimington, I think that was her name. And there's a quote from...
That was it, yes.
Stella Rimington. There's another one as well, but certainly Stella Rimington. And she says at one point to all of the people there, she said, we are the people that are going to run the world. Nobody else is qualified to do it. Now, that's completely in there. And there's another woman, I've forgotten her name, that Putin wrote about. She's a sort of duchess over here. Deemed to be one of the most scary people on the face of the earth. I've forgotten her name now. She lives up in a castle in Scotland. And she's of this grouping, this thinking. So there are probably agencies and power groups out there that we don't get to talk about very much. But these are long-standing. Even saw something the other day, you know about the interrelated bloodlines of all these things. Like, they're all related to the same people. George Washington in the States was related to them. They're all by blood. The Bush family, all of this stuff. Blood's thicker than water. They're involved in some hellish sort of thing from our point of view. And they've definitely got... they're quite happy to have people killed. And you and I are not. And I never want to be.
Well, do you remember that? That's right. Do you remember that body that was found in Sandringham up a tree? And this was a number of years ago when Phil the Greek was still alive. And now, if you'd found a body up a tree in your garden, the police would be on your property with, sealing it all off. And you're being for questioning, this, that, and the other. Oh, no, the royals weren't involved, of course. And it was sort of matter of fact, they found a body up a tree. How does a corpse get up a tree, for Christ's sake? This is the thing. And it's almost as if they can get away with murder. They probably do. But this idea, that they are our royals, they're not. They are Normans who enslaved us. Charlie Boy, his ancestors are Norman, not English. This is what angers me. And we should look up to these royals as if, they're English. No, they're not. They've been imposed upon us. The last king of England was Harold. That's right. It was Harold. Yeah. So, and as I said, that was the last, I think, truly justifiable war. We were invaded and we had to repel them, which we didn't do, unfortunately. But I can't think of any just war after that. Because this country, I don't think, has been under any threat since then. Not even during the Napoleonic times, I don't think it was under any threat. Such.
No, you're right.
Because we had a navy that was phenomenal. We had a small army, big navy, and that's how it should be. And even First World War, we had a massive navy. And in the Second World War, the idea that Germany could invade under Operation Sea Lion this country is bullshit. It couldn't have done it. It didn't have the facilities to invade this country in 1940. Just couldn't have done it.
Not to mention that they didn't want to. Not to mention that they didn't want to. Not to mention that they sent 37 letters of peace offerings, all intercepted by Churchill's agents and therefore denied to the British public. Not and very little mention that the newspaper columns of the Times newspaper in 36 and 37, as the rumblings got going, were vehemently against another war with Germany. There shouldn't have even been a first one, because it was the Kaiser's fault, right? Yeah, of course it was. The Kaiser caused it all. Yeah. There are a whole series of pressure points that are applied to bring it about, and then there's a story already prepared. You go, it's one man. He's the naughty man. He did it all. No. Even Stalin, they've all got, you can't operate. The idea of a dictator literally going around and telling everybody what to do and they all do it. Nah, don't work like that.
But they reckon, I don't know, they reckon a lot was hyped up about Stalin, even though he was a bastard and killed many. He
was not a nice man. He was a cruel man.
Very cruel, but they reckon Trotsky hated his guts. The bloke we got the ice pick through the head, I think.
Yeah, he did.
And historians have hooked on to what Trotsky said about Stalin. So we really don't know. That's the real fact.
Well, I think the thing with Trotsky is he was Rothschild's placeman, and that's why. I mean, the document worth. I forgot the name of it. Red Symphony. So I haven't forgotten the name of it. There's a document called Red Symphony, which anybody interested in this, I suggest you get a copy. There's a researcher down in Australia that's got a copy. You'll probably find a lot of links to it as well on Henry Mackow's site at henrymacow.com with a K. It's a tremendous document because it basically shows you, again, the financial element. It's always the financial element that's involved. And Trotsky was supposed to take over Russia because communism is a banker's creation. It's created, augmented, and supported by bankers. Because communism is their ultimate goal, which is what globalism is, which is that you've got the entire population linked into income tax, and therefore you can control the entire country by controlling their income tax situation. And that's what it's about. It's not, doesn't really pay for anything much. It's a control mechanism like all of these things. So, they didn't reckon on Stalin. And this is why, to a great degree, why they allowed Germany to rearm, even though they needed to anyway, because the idea was that they would act as a bulwark against Stalin controlling their pet project and not their guy. It's bizarre. I mean, it's labyrinthine. It's non-stop, this stuff. You'll never get to the bottom of it. Who'd want to? I think.
We won't know, and nor the next generation. I think when you look at what is still hidden away in the vaults, and especially with Rudolf Hess in 1941 when he came to Great Britain, that is still under lock and key. We still do not know a lot about what went on with Rudolf Hess.
No.
But I know the late, great Dave Starbuck reckoned it wasn't Hess that was actually in Spandau. I don't know, but he reckons it wasn't Hess. And he said
I guess as I said, my school friend, I went to school with this guy, owns the castle that Hess stayed at when he flew into Scotland. So how about that? And David Irving knocked on his door one day when he was doing research on Hess and stuff like that. So, yeah, I'm all interwoven with this stuff in a way I couldn't have possibly anticipated. How about that? So, anyway, Eric, we're coming towards the end here. I was going to mention one last thing. There's a film coming out about Goebbels with Russell Crowe, so if you want your latest standard mainstream propaganda, I'm prejudging, which is a terrible, evil thing, but I'm expecting it to be that. Line up and see that. Russell Crowe's great in most of the things that he's in. Apparently he's lost some weight for this role. He would have had to, actually, because Goering he plays Goering. It's all about Nuremberg. Which, of course, I'm going to be rather scathing. Having read Irving's book on Nuremberg, and also that letter that Goering sent to Churchill at the end of the war, basically accusing Churchill of causing it, and I'm kind of more on Goring's side with regards to that. There we go. So, listen, I'm going to play out with... I played this the other day, but it's such a nice tune, and it's old BBC stuff. We're going to play In Party Mood again by Jack Strachey, and it's Housewife's Choice.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, we're just going up to 12:30. It's time for a cup of tea here in England. I don't know what it's time for in America. Probably your second or third cup of coffee. It's just coming up to 7:30 Eastern time. So if you've been able to join us, well done for being up early and all that kind of stuff. This was an impromptu thing. I've enjoyed it so much. I've got to think about... working a show in at this time of the week, a morning show. I enjoy this better, actually, to be quite honest. The night stuff.
You're more wide awake. because I find I get very knackered about sort of at 10:30.
Yeah.
But I mean, last night I was a bit knackered, so when I went to bed, I just straight my head hit the pillow, boom, I was out. So
anyway,
yes.
Eric, it's been great. I wish you a good time at Iceland. I hope you get your foodstuffs and all that kind of stuff. Everybody in YouTube and Rumble that managed to find us this morning, we've had a decent little crowd in. It's not really been publicised much. We wanted to do it, of course, because it's the 11th of the 11th, and it is in remembrance of all people that have had their lives cut short due to the causes of war. We've talked around a lot of other things as well, but it's been great to have your company this morning and now this afternoon here in. And maybe we'll start doing a regular sort of, I don't know, late brunch show, second breakfast show, or something like that, as the Hobbits would say.
Second breakfast, yeah.
Second breakfast. Anyway, playing you out with a good old classic from old British radio, from British Light Radio in the 50s. This is In Party Mood, which, of course, you can't say that we're necessarily in that, but it's such a charming little tune. Housewives everywhere, get your dusters out, ready to go. And put the kettle on, and we'll see you on Thursday. Where are we now? Tuesday morning. So we'll be here Thursday, 8 p.m. in the UK, 3 p.m. US Eastern for Paul English Live. We'll be doing that. Eric will probably be here, I'm hoping, on Thursday. So we'll carry on some of these things. Have a good rest of day and a good rest of week. We'll see you in a couple of days. Here's Jack Strakey.